Well, that's a pretty painting. Nice color choices, energetic brushwork, dynamic presence, smooth lighting, fulfilling composition, delves a little into my vulnerable side. An all-around nice viewing experience. You might say it's quite beautiful. But what does beautiful mean? Like, it has some spirit to it, some charm. It's not just sitting there, it's engaging you. Engaging me? There's like a meaning to it or something, I don't know. It has a presence, you might say. The point is, something inside of you is different because you looked at this. Something moved. Something is illuminated. The phenomenon of life feels slightly different now. Now there is something else that moves. A different set of values that illuminates something different in me. And life becomes a different phenomenon once again. Now a different value system once more, and something in me changes again, culminating in yet another adjustment to the phenomenon of life. What is that little thing that moves when I look inside of someone else's imagination? What is it that lights up? How do we study it? Is it worth attempting an answer to that ever-elusive question, what are people after all? As time goes on, are we getting closer, or are we getting further away? And are the people of the past so far behind us as we think? Take a visit to the monastery and listen to a lecture from Sandro Sebastian, the art monk. Any field you work in will have the task of somehow tolerating and dealing with coworkers, even in the arts. I've said it elsewhere, but those people, those other adults in your life that are not your parents or teachers at school, the ones not legally required to guide you and foster your development, not relatives, not friends that you associate with by choice, but rather out of necessity to make a living, these professional colleagues are people that otherwise have nothing to do with you and your life, your identity, your personal hopes and dreams. Co-workers are people that only have a need to pay the bills just like you do, and possess similar work experience, similar contacts, education, and professional experience. And they've made similar career decisions as you. That's how you all ended up here together. So this is part of the human identity, dealing with all of this, particularly for adult men who don't have another group to do it for them. And certain sides of your personality do come out and begin to solidify themselves over the years as you meet the adult world from a professional perspective. That's why when they hire someone with more experience, it's for the experience, regardless of talent. We just need someone who is used to all of this and knows what to expect from all of this. And all of this, by the way, is the abstract side of reality. Not our biology, not our bodily chemistry, or physics of how we move, what this professional environment does to our inner selves. How do we discuss that? As you know, I regard the arts as a science that examines our self-esteem and that dweeby little inner world we carry around with us all day, and how it affects our behavior. So what about you, Sandro Sebastian? What kind of coworkers do you have? You seem to do all this by yourself. Are you exempt from the rule? What do you have to put up with in the workplace, as it were? Well, let me tell you, the product you are looking at, between the work I create and the promotional content and the promo content of the promo content, was not arrived at overnight. Just like you ladies have to kiss a lot of frogs before you meet that prince, as they say, metaphorically speaking, you might be surprised to hear that men have the same challenge as they encounter each other in the professional working world. What pays for all of this, and what keeps it from falling apart, is a very delicate, intricate, deeply nuanced part of their lives as men. And the relationships that men form professionally with each other, based on our notions of how masculinity functions on paper, you might say, and all that's depending on us, is a whole study unto itself, one that can be quite subjective, as one discovers. Needless to say, let me join you ladies in saying that a good man is hard to find. In the arts, you might first look at visual artists, like painters and sculptors or photographers. the people who might adorn the walls of a gallery, those people for some reason are just big babies, pure and simple. I've mentioned this elsewhere, but for some reason, people think that the visual arts is an excuse to run away from being a grown-up. Like, if I'm a well-respected and successful artist, I don't have to face reality like an adult. I can celebrate that part of me that's emotionally stunted, the part of my personality that makes me a nuisance to everyone else. If I'm an artist, I don't have to fix it. I don't have to figure out where my dweeby little inner world ends and the real world begins. Because I'm an artist. I don't have to set up a divider between the two or something. Like, this job gives me an excuse to blend the two in my mind, in front of other people, as though any job gives you an excuse to do that. I beg your pardon. I mean, how impressed are you when you are witnessing someone else do that? Walk around with no filter. Exactly. But what about other people in the arts, Sandro? How about musicians? They're not so bad, right? Musicians aren't the same kind of big babies that visual artists are, but they are really emotional. They're just really touchy-feely. It's a different kind of baby. Then there are writers, who are just snooty pseudo-intellectuals with an overinflated sense of self-importance. Like, because I use more words per sentence, it makes my point more convincing. Yes, because that's exactly how rhetoric works. Then filmmakers, especially Hollywood filmmakers, if you ever encounter any, or hear from anyone who's encountered any of these director guys, they are all emotionally stunted, overgrown adolescent boys who still live in that fantasy world of a 14-year-old boy who wants to be a filmmaker because he really, really likes Star Wars, if you can't tell from the content they produce. That timid, dopey part of you that is afraid to grow up and face reality. I mean, we all have that part of ourselves deep down inside of us. We just keep it there. The excited little 14-year-old boy, which is why we enjoy viewing that kind of content. It does make a lot of money. But even if it is a fun world to visit, the rest of us fellas outgrew it along the way, man, while these filmmaker guys seem to have not. And they are still afraid of the girls at their high school for some reason, the ones that rejected them for being nerds. These guys never made it to the point of maturity in later years when you realize that it was all in your head. And it's not that the other gender doesn't like you, it's just that that isn't really how the world works. You can't just approach a random stranger and possess them, because people are not your property. And that's not why we have the institution anyway. But these Hollywood director guys stay insecure. Like, the only way I can get a girl to be with me is by coercing her with my position as director. I can't just be a charming, polite gentleman and make her feel desired like an adult man. No, I have to coerce her into sexual favors so I can have my 14-year-old boy fantasy. So what about actors, Sandro? Speaking of a career in the arts and the co-workers you may have, what do you think of actors? Actors are just fucking pansies. Pure and simple. It's like they're made of glass. No other way to say that. So the art job is 50% making art and 50% having to tolerate the personality disorders of your coworkers. Good luck out there. This is why I work alone. Then there's the issue of how you gain popularity. You are trying to be part of a club of people who are already popular. There are big-timers in your field who already have lots of attention, and you want to be associated with them so you can boost your reputation too. You're going to be tempted to do what you did in high school. Like when you're the new kid, you just find the cool kids and dress the way they dress, talk the way they talk, hang out wherever they hang out, and try to be seen with them, or snap a photo with them, maybe even date one of them to get people talking about you, so that you become popular by association. Any popularity contest involves a bit of doing that, admittedly. Most people immediately think of the current batch of celebrity pop stars and Hollywood actors that are disgustingly overhyped and overpromoted in the modern pop culture landscape. I mean, even the ones that I don't like, I still hear about them regularly. I may not even know exactly what they do, or have checked out any of their work, but all the gossip about them floats to my ears somehow. I know more about the gossip about you than I do about your movies. But what aspiring artists don't think about is that you can choose which popular kids you want to fit in with, which ones you want to snap a photo with, as it were. It doesn't have to be anyone presently alive, or someone I regularly see on television, because how popular are those people really, or are they just really good at seeming popular? And that club of history makers and legendary figures that built the field, that club is even more exclusive than the current pop culture icons they overpromote in order to sell tickets. Anyone who's lived in the world at least 3 decades has seen how often they have new celebrities and pop singers coming through that revolving door. They all start to run together after a while. Just the random jerk in the cubicle next to you with an extreme makeover catapulted to superstardom. Not that snapping a photo with a contemporary celebrity while they are at the peak of their popularity is not a useful tool. Many of them often use each other for the publicity, and it is a pretty difficult club to get into, hence the value of a photo with them. But what if you found another club that's even more difficult to get into, one that looks outright impossible from a modern-day perspective? You would be harder to replace, harder to upstage, even for a mainstream Hollywood celebrity or pop star, the ones we see coming through that revolving door, people that are financed by the wealthy powers that be to fill the airways and entertain us on the drive to and from work, on the couch at home after a long day, and at the end of the week at cinemas, taking us temporarily away from our troubles as we live our weekly lives in that plastic box that they have designed for us to live in after graduating high school. This is as good as it gets. The plastic box designed by the people that move our lives around like pieces on a chessboard. As that powerful group, we need to fill that manufactured babysit the masses pop culture space with somebody, and that somebody doesn't need to be anyone special, just cute enough to hold our attention for a few hours once or twice a week. That's why the wealthy financiers of that industry swap the celebrities in and out so frequently, but it's good work if you can get it, I suppose. And it's not as though that pop work is not amusing. There's a reason it makes lots of money, but this kind of pop culture art is just art that doesn't change anything, doesn't illuminate anything. We want to fit into the club of people that actually caused something to move. People that change the way we look at things, and still change the way we look at things as the world continues to change around us. There are people that I describe by saying they keep us oriented. Things happen in the world and in our lives that disorient us. If you're young, just give it time, you'll see it happen. Things happen that startle us and shift our reality and make us wonder if we really knew what was going on the entire time in the first place, now that I'm looking at this, now that this change has occurred. The masterful artists throughout history, the ones we decide on an individual level, are a bit more in touch with the general human identity than the rest of us. I say we make this decision on the individual level because it is subjective, thank God. These individuals, who seem to take our existence on this planet just a bit less for granted than the average person, and we trust them to illuminate our inner selves for us, these people are in a more exclusive club still. And we let you join that club if we decide that we trust your judgment. You can't force us to trust your judgment as the prolific artist. But if we do decide we trust you, your critics can't force us not to. Trust you, that is. So it's high risk, high reward, I suppose. Isn't it always? Now, the more exclusive the club, the harder it is for you to snap a photo with these popular kids, living or dead, whoever the popular kids are to you from your perspective. The more effort it takes, and the more that has to come together for you to happen, then the more the photo is worth. The photo with the popular kids, that is. And when I say worth, I don't mean dollars and cents. I mean, how much does it help your career? That kind of worth. Choose your popular kids carefully and decide exactly what needs to come together for you to get a photo op with them. Let's take a walk back in time and look at some baby pictures. This is a piece I did for a classroom assignment as a 23-year-old undergrad in my last year of college, back in the spring of 2012. Yep, that's right. The Sandro Sebastian we all know and love didn't start out this way. He was once in his early 20s, still nervous and tentative, trying to figure out what people are and how deeply does our humanity run. So bear with me as I go through my archives and we discuss the journey of this one piece and its elements. I liked the idea of some restaurant workers, probably the chefs, probably the custodial people, maybe a waiter or two, outside in the moonlit streetlight lamp back alley behind the restaurant on a break of some sort, or perhaps late at night just before closing. I like what lights do in that scenario, and the idea of a break time with a man reading what is a newspaper or magazine, some periodical on a makeshift table, which is a crate or cardboard box you might find in a back alley somewhere. The subject matter, though, is not what's most significant, as that can be taken with a photograph. At this point in my development, I'm trying to discover what gives a painting its charisma, its personality, and how the abstract elements are supposed to add up to something greater than the sum of its parts. And I'm doing it like a 23-year-old who still hasn't met that many people yet, and most of the people I've met have been other young people, in heavily monitored and structured environments like school, and other extracurricular activities designed for young people. The interpretation of painting and its effect on human psychology, what makes a good one, then is somewhat superficial and obvious. At that age, when your own personality is not fully developed yet, because nothing has happened to you yet, and the same goes for all your colleagues, you don't see that deeply into human vulnerability. You are just trying to be sexy. You are trying to fit in. You are concerned with what grabs our attention on the surface. The light raking across puffy jackets I clearly found very sexy. The fuzzy impressionist type brushwork is immediately sexy. But this could still be a snazzy work of graphic design, rather than a thoughtful work of art. But I do like this upright crate over here, sitting on top of this crate. The glow it has about it is quite nice, very pretty. But we still are not sure what the human struggle is at this point. But for a 23-year-old kid about to be launched into the adult world for the first time, this is definitely not a bad place to be. Lord knows there are young people that go out there with less than this. Maybe I shouldn't complain. About 2 years later, in 2014, we've got this piece. I liked the idea and wanted to continue it. I put these guys in that back alley on their late night break yet again, and I replaced the table with one of those giant cable spools, like when they have to transport a large amount of cable and wrap it around one of those large spools. It's in the light of the doorway, which is a pretty doorway, even if that's all it is. But the thinking here is a little more sophisticated, a little more confident. I like the broken chair over here. You'd think, if it's broken, then why is it there? Well, because it's in a back alley and no one is really in charge of maintenance back here. It would just sit there as a piece of junk that nobody uses. I'm just using it to establish the mood. I like the lazy, slothful feel of it, though. When you look at it, you feel your knees go a little wobbly, like that losing your balance feeling. Like what you would feel if you were to sit on the chair not knowing it was broken and feel it slip under you, like, whoa, oops. And here I modified the background figures. In the original picture, I had one guy in the moonlight smoking a cigarette, and I upgraded it to two guys in that back corner, under a porch light type of overhead lamp. You gotta love the way that light gives texture into things. I clearly do. At this point, I'm 25 years old, so I'm still trying to look sexy and fit in with the cool kids, whoever the cool kids are to me, but this still isn't a bad place to be at this age. Then I decided to take the leap into taking an isolated figure and just studying him. I like this posture, leaning on the arm railing there. For some reason, I can't let that door in the background go. You know what the significance of that door is? For storytelling purposes, we need the door open in the back so that we know what this is. Without the door, it's just a bunch of guys in a random space, and we don't know how they got there, or what kind of gathering this is. But if we see that open door, we figure, okay, they must have come from back there, from inside of the door. Maybe they work in that building, or live there, or something. And the reason it's still open is because people are wandering in and out continually. This must be a communal area that we are in for everyone who works here. Like they kind of hang out and have a smoke break or whatever. Without the open door, it would be confusing and feel incomplete. It's almost like you can hear the light ruckus and murmur probably coming from in the kitchen, if that's what that is. So if we're going to have them be co-workers and decide on that, then let's dress them according to the employer's dress code. Here's the first pass of a larger format painting, done the following year, as these guys were still on my mind. To this day, I still dig this composition. I like the little valley in between here. The staircase would stay through the whole process. And you can see what figure inspired the whole thing. My man on the hand railing over there. Let's look at the next pass. Whoop. Okay, change some expressions, change some facial features and hairstyles, change some postures. Most notably, the guy on the far right, who's on the elevated portion, he's leaning up against the wall now, and is just a different guy entirely. Now, on this third one, changing again, I added another guy in the middle, with the longer hair, looking down at the guy sitting on the staircase. That empty space in the middle felt like it needed something. I guess it felt like I was accidentally dividing it into two different paintings, with that red wall in between, like we don't need all these guys at the same time. So putting this central, slightly taller figure in the center helped bridge the gap, as it were. Now I can continue my read across the horizontal landscape of men. Another change, and you can see we've gotten rid of the elevated portion on the far right entirely. It's now another guy sitting on the stone steps, in front of another building exit. Their uniforms have gotten more similar too, whatever they are. Chefs and busboys, perhaps. And since I was so intrigued by this piece, I did decide to take some figures and draw them separately. You don't have to be looking for anything in particular, you can just draw them separately to see if anything new occurs to you in this exercise. Or you might just find a new way of looking at them. Think of it like rehearsal. The whole thing is a finding process. I'm remembering at this point in my development too, my line work is getting more smooth and patient, not so frantic and tentative as it was a few years ago. I dig this drawing just by itself. The study of the guy leaning up against the wall, the only figure that is completely facing us and standing to full height at the same time. Somehow the piece needed at least one guy like that, and maybe only one guy like that, because the rest of them are not facing us, or only partially so, and we feel a bit alienated by this group. Something about getting someone's full front and relatively unobscured by other figures or other limbs. There's a distinct role he plays dramatically. We kind of like to rest on him as we glide across with our eyes, you might say. Well, maybe I'm thinking too hard, but as I say, there's no wrong answers, only boring answers. A few more slight adjustments, and making the light a little more even-handed, and this is me in 2015. Let's hold this one up to the original back in college from 2012. Ha! It's the same guy, interestingly. And some stuff has happened to him between one and the other, but not as much as will happen to him in the next decade. Don't worry, folks. He's coming to us as fast as he can. He'll get there. So 2 more years go by, and now it's 2017, and I'm deciding I might want to apply to graduate school for art. And I need to take a year off from other projects to create a body of work that shows where I'm at right now. Not that I couldn't apply to graduate school with other works I'd created in years prior, but you really want a competitive edge for the application process, especially if you want some kind of scholarship. So among the 10 to 12 pieces normally required for a portfolio submission, I decided to do yet another version of these guys, but in a more compressed format. It's fewer guys on a smaller canvas. This one is about 16 inches high by 20 inches wide, and that other one was maybe 2 feet tall by 3 feet across. Rather large. And I'm doing this one in oil for the graduate school portfolio. You can see I'm kind of getting there quicker because I already know where I'm going. I've done this painting so many times before, as you've seen, so I can get right to the point. But the thing to remember is that the person who ends up looking at it and assessing it is only concerned with this piece. They don't care about the other ones, don't worry. They won't see the other ones. They only care about the absolute latest finished one. This is how you maintain a competitive edge out there. You might liken it to a stand-up comedian who tells his jokes in nightclubs or restaurants, or on college campuses or basements of bookstores, wherever they book venues, anywhere he can test his material and figure out what jokes work and what jokes don't work, and see what parts of the routine the audience can connect with and relate to, and what parts kind of go over their heads, or what parts they just aren't interested in. The comedian does all of this in private for years, so by the time he has a shot on the late-night talk show, broadcast to millions, or have his own comedy special being taped, he's done this routine in front of so many audiences and seen how they react on so many nights that he knows what he's doing and he knows how he knows. We just don't see that former part. We only care about the finished product. Or you might think of a band of musicians who have gone on tour and played shows with a set of songs that they shuffle around and decide which songs work the best and which ones get us booed off stage. So by the time they are playing at the Hollywood Bowl, or on the late-night talk show as the guest musician, they've done these numbers so many times in front of so many audiences that they know how the audience will react, and they know how they know. When I applied to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York, with this piece among others, it actually got me a scholarship to attend in the fall of 2018. So these guys helped me out in the long run. Guys I met back in 2012, as a 23-year-old undergrad. It's not nearly as intimidating as it looks. It's just about patience. It takes time to figure out what makes a good one, especially when the answer could be anything. Sweets is a children's book about a young boy who receives superpowers by eating candy and chocolate. He begins a crusade in the night against evildoers and criminals, making headlines in the news. What follows is an account given by a boy who witnessed the young justice giver leaping through buildings in his neighborhood.
It's been just a few nights in the last month, but the kid, the one everyone's talking about on the news, he's been using our neighborhood. I swear, I'm not lying. He's jumping from building to building, running on rooftops and stopping bad guys out in the city. But my little alley out back, in our neighborhood, I think he runs through here sometimes. My parents both thought the news was faking, showing stories about the Superboy. But after we saw him run past us, across the roadway in front of us, we were driving home. I said, that was him. And they now think he's probably real. Mom still thinks it was just some other kid, and not the Superboy on the news. But really, for real, one night when I was in my room doing drawings, I saw his outline outside my window. I know he comes through our neighborhood some nights. It was like twice just last week. I always tell kids at school, but so do other kids, so no one believes anyone. I never got any decent photos either. too dark out there at night, and no one would believe it's real. I totally heard a thump one night. I shot to the window, trying to wake up my eyes to see him. He had a box, and sitting on my neighbor's roof was eating these little cupcakes or maybe donuts. He sure scarfed them down real quick, like he went through a dozen in a few minutes. After eating, he stood. All I saw was outline in the moonlight, but he looked like he was looking at me. Was he stretching? Did he just wave? Whatever he did, he hasn't come back since. Guess he's shy.
Now I want to ask you, like, is this background too much? I kind of wanted to change the background for the still life presentation videos because I just was getting tired of those curtains, wanted to see if I could do something different. And after I bought this from a fabric store, I was all excited, like, oh, that's a cool design. This is gonna nice and bright background. I like it, like the smoky tone of it and all that. But then I set it up and I got behind the camera. I'm like, whoa, was this kind of like seafaring nausea, like a little, did we get a little seasick looking at this over here? I mean, it's kind of a cool design, but is it the kind that gets annoying when it's repeated? I mean, I don't know. Do all the little swirls kind of cancel each other out? The style is called like oil on water, or oil streak, like, you know, when you're walking after a rainy day and there's a puddle and there's like some oil on top of it and it has that swirly, colorful. This is like that swirl. That's what this is. I thought, like, are we supposed to be staring at this long enough and see a picture emerge? We don't want it to be distracting. Well, you know, I guess I'll just use it until it gets annoying.